Nikki. How are you doing?
Hey Tessa, what's up?
Not much. Well, I guess we can dive right into it. So this is more or less meant to be kind of just an overview of who you are, what you do for SK. So I guess first off, I would love if you could tell me a little bit just about your academic background, your personal background, all the interesting stuff you do as far as traveling and sailing and all of this great stuff that you do even outside of SK.
Yeah, so I'm a Jersey girl from New Jersey, grew up there, born in New York, raised in New Jersey. And my academics kind of started being super nerdy there. I went to a super nerdy, lovely little high school called MAST in Sandy Hook, New Jersey, which was the Marine Academy of Science and Technology. So I feel like I went to college before I even went to college because it was a super rigorous school for engineering and science nerds. My interest had always been marine science and biology ever since I was tiny kid. I mean, I was the kid who was in kindergarten and was like, I want to train dolphins. And then as I got older, I realized that it's a bit more involved than playing with dolphins. It's like actual science, but I was like, this is cool. So yeah, I went to a really cool school. Had like, I don't know, probably 50 days at sea by the time I graduated high school. And so I went to college at the University of Miami for marine science in particular. They have one of the best schools in the country. So my college admissions journey was very targeted. I know a lot of kids at SK apply to like 15, 20, sometimes more schools. I applied to 7. I knew exactly what I wanted, but I got into every single school because took a very targeted approach and I knew what specific programs I was going for. And I think that, we'll get to talking about coaching philosophy a little bit later, but I think that there is some value to, students who really know what they want. And there are a lot of really cool programs out there that we can help them find and really try to target their approach so they don't feel like they have to do like 100 hours of work. I think I wrote maybe like 7 essays and it was fine. um, but yeah, so I ended up at University of Miami I started out majoring in marine biology and then I switched to marine affairs, which is marine science plus policy, because I started getting more involved in like environmental policy side of things, like the human side of science. And then I also was gearing up to do some research and studying, working in the graduate department for aquaculture and aquaponics. Um, but alongside all of the things I did in high school and college, I'd also been doing a lot of educational activities. I was always working in the summers doing like field trips and education and outdoors experiences and working with under-resourced populations with science education. And so I also was minoring in education to get my teaching certificate. So it kind of came to that, fork in the road when I was graduating college. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay, go to grad school, get into research, or am I going to get into education? And I kind of decided at that point that I had already been doing research pretty much since I got into high school, since I went to such a targeted high school. So I felt like I'd already been doing it for like 8, 10 years already. And I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I went into education instead because I don't know, I just kind of thought that it's really cool to figure out how to save all the fish in the world, but if we don't teach the people how to do it, then, what's the whole point, right? So I really started getting more into the advocacy side of things in education. And then so I went into teaching, and to stay on brand, I started working at the Palm Beach Maritime Academy. So I was a marine science teacher at a maritime academy out of college as well. So fish are the theme here, water's the theme here. And along the same time, I had started sailing. I started sailing in college. I was a walk-on recruit to the sailing team at UM, which was a club team, but competed at a very high level with lots of varsity teams across the country. And by my senior year in college, I was going to nationals. I was president of the team. They still tell stories about me as like the girl who started from scratch and then ended up doing all this stuff, which was cool. And so sailing became a huge part of my life. And I always wanted to do it, but never had the opportunity until I got to college. And so I was teaching out of college and I was doing that for a few years, but I kept having all these sailing opportunities pop up. And I kept having to say no to them because I had a job. And so that was kind of grinding at me a little bit. I was like, what can I do So like I just really started this, a lot of my friends had been sailing since they were like 5 years old and they were already burnt out, but I was like fresh, I was eager. So I was like, I need a new job. Like I love teaching and I love science, but like I need a job I can kind of take with me. So I decided to become a remote worker before remote working was cool, well before COVID. And so I started my own education firm. I started out just doing tutoring and test prep. But along the years, I picked up some more skills and training around academic coaching and executive function coaching and leadership coaching, because I saw that the kids that I was working with, they needed more than just, here's how you solve this math problem. It's like, how do you actually study? How do you manage your time? How do you de-stress? How do you make sure that you're meeting all of your physiological needs as well? And somewhere within those years, I also got my yoga teacher training in a very classical style of yoga that's very holistic. And it's not just about stretching, but it's really like about the whole, not just spiritual experience, which is a whole other thing, but just like taking care of yourself from the inside out. And so I started infusing a lot of that, the science behind that, into my practice as an educator as well, working with kids on just like, are you breathing properly? Which is like nothing that people really think about. But I'd be tutoring a kid and sitting next to him, and he'd be like struggling to solve this math problem. And I'm noticing that he's holding his breath. And I'm like, dude, like inhale, please. Because like, how are you possibly going to be able to concentrate on this if you're not even breathing? So I started infusing a lot of just sort of like physiological lessons along with the education lessons, the coaching, and that kind of started snowballing in itself. And then the kids I was working with turned out they needed help getting into college. So I went and got trained with the Independent Educational Consultants Association. They have this whole training institute. I went through that, started going to conferences, touring colleges. And so it really was this kind of organic growth over time that led me into this field, from my background and experience in science and education, kind of what I do now. But the spark really was having a job that, I'm all about work-life balance. And I think that it's really important for us to be able to do what fulfills you, and that I love my job, but also it's like it's a job, and it's at the end of the day, I still have other things to do with my life. So I travel a lot at this point. I take my laptop with me wherever I go. I'm sitting in the car on the road, having meetings, working on essays from airplanes. And it's just ramped up more and more where I do professional sailing now. So I just picked up a gig next month. I'm going down to Charleston, got hired to sail on a team. I've gone out and done deliveries. So I'd be working on Starlink in the middle of the ocean. So I think it's been a really fulfilling time to have a job that really, satisfies my need to kind of serve others and help, while also using a lot of kind of my science and education background and doing it in a way that allows me the personal life flexibility that is fulfilling for my needs. And I think it also satisfies, I have ADD. So for me to be able to just kind of have a little bit more control of my life, but also do all these different things that I'm interested in and be able to balance it all is just really important for my well-being too. So long story short, came from science to education. Here I am coaching, focusing a lot of like life skills, but also, helping the kids figure out what is it that really interests them, and that there doesn't need to be one specific path to take, and that life isn't linear, but let's keep building up all the experiences. Let's learn, let's be curious and see where that takes you.
Well, I think you're also just such a textbook example of someone who lives this in practice. But I feel like at SK we so emphasize this notion of living holistically and planning holistically, and not just planning for, okay, college is the next step. I need to plan on how to do A, B, and C to get into college, to pass this AP, whatever. It's all right, like who am I as a person? What is important to me? It's not just what am I going to major in and where am I going to go to college? It's what kind of life do I want to lead, and what, aspects of my personality, myself, are important in planning for and in planning around or integrating into that plan. And like the fact that you've built this crazy life, like traveling and sailing and helping kids navigate academia, the college admissions process, like that is not something that you wouldn't that you would have gotten to without like incredible level of self-awareness and self-reflection and very intentional planning. And I think that's really what we preach here. So it's just very cool to have someone who lives such a cool life in practice because of these kinds of things that we're encouraging students to pursue. Because I think especially when it comes to college admissions, a lot of students get freaked out and are very inclined to just kind of take the cookie cutter approach of just like, okay, I just need to do the formula to get where I need to be, and that's not how life works.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but yeah,
I mean, if you
um,
told me when I was 17 that I'd be doing this, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't know this was a job. I didn't even know pro sailing was a job until COVID, when I was getting, on teams and other people were getting paid on the teams. I'm like, you guys get paid for this? And so I started asking for money and then they started giving it to me, So just like every year of my life is just learning some new opportunity comes my way. And I think that just being open to opportunity is such a important skill that I try to cultivate in my students, because like you don't know what's coming down the pipe next, but you can be prepared for it by being open, by being curious, and by saying yes and by showing up. And like you never know what's going to happen, but I can guarantee you that if you don't do something, a lot of things aren't going to happen, right?